We're live.
Wonderful. Well, happy Tuesday. Happy Thursday. It's not even Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
Happy
What day is it?
Thursday. And I see people are starting to come into the room. Welcome. Um, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Michelle Teheux. I write Untrickled here on Substack, and I also write the Indie Writer. But this is more of an untrickled topic for me. And Allison.
And I'm Allison Tate, and I write Everyone Inherits Something, which is just about all the things that we inherit, which are things and ideas and concepts and historical frameworks. So one of those is retirement. Retirement brings in a lot of those things, and aging brings in a lot. So I'm excited about today.
And I am highly qualified to talk about money and aging. The aging, I just turned 60
They
yesterday.
say happy birthday.
Yeah, I am very cognizant of my years, that there's something about a milestone birthday. And I don't know why I think I know anything about money because I don't have any. I'm like the opposite of qualified, perhaps, when it comes to that.
Yeah. I think what is it? There's one of those things. So one of the things I write about is that people both on both ends of the wealth spectrum, sort of low income and high wealth, have a lot of similarities. Obviously they get treated differently by the legal system and they get treated differently by culture. But one thing they share is that they think about money a lot, right? So not having money is actually you think about it all the time sometimes. So
You do.
yeah,
Somebody had just posted on, I can't remember now who it was, but somebody had posted on my Substack something about they had just seen the study showing that people who are living in poverty, it actually affects your ability to think well. It
yeah,
affects cognitively. And the reason for that is because if you're worried you're not going to be able to pay
yeah,
rent or buy groceries or whatever,
absolutely.
it's hard to think about anything else except how am I going to buy groceries this week or how am I going to make my rent this month? That's going to take up all of your mental broadband. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely true. So many studies out there about just both physical and mental well-being and how it's related to uh, you know, having sufficient income and being able to go and buy groceries and keep your lights on and the stress that comes, the physical stress and the physical um, results of having that financial stress. And this makes me think had been looking at some statistics when thinking about our conversation and found statistics that basically 1 in 10, depending on how you define it, 1 in 10 to 10 to 15% of people over 65 are living in poverty,
it
um,
doesn't surprise me
which
at
is
all.
not surprising. And then, so that number, people might think is low, but there was another number, and there was a website called Elder Index, and there was a statistic there that said nearly 45 of all senior households lack sufficient income to cover basic living costs. So that's a much more significant number than the actual poverty being defined by the poverty line.
Well, the poverty line is a silly, silly, silly number. I mean, it makes no sense. The poverty line is so amazingly low. I think you could easily double it and be at a much more reasonable number.
Mhm.
Do you know off the top of your head? I can look it up if you don't. But
I don't remember exactly, but it's really low for a household. I think it's something like $36,000 or $40,000. That's for
for
a
a single
household.
person, I want to say it's in the 20s. And I'm
Yeah,
actually going to look this up because
yeah.
now
I
that
mean,
I,
it's very low. People were talking about it a lot a couple of months ago when there was uh, a Substack post about the new poverty line should be something like 140.
yeah,
People were, uh, you
that
know,
drove me insane, by the way.
people were upset about it. The thing that was interesting about that was, if a thought experiment, if that was the poverty line, and you think about what kind of benefits people get at the poverty line, maybe some parts of it are not stupid, right? Like at the poverty line, you would get health care, you would get, uh, you know, energy assistance with your bills if you were a senior. You would get benefits as a senior. So it would it's never going to happen and it might not be the right thing, but it's interesting to think about the benefits that would come with an increased poverty line. And it would certainly help seniors, people who are living without, and I'm defining seniors here as people who are living without paid income, right? People who have retired. So I'm not thinking of what is it, fire?
Oh, yeah.
Those
That's
people.
the people on the very opposite end of the spectrum. I
Yeah.
looked this up, by the way. For a single person, I'll invite everybody to take a guess. What is the poverty line for a single person? Now's your chance to guess. It is $15,960 for a single person and 33,000 for a family of four, and that is the 2026. That's the most up-to-date number. That's not an old number.
Yeah.
Imagine yourself living on, under 16,000, and for all I know, someone in the chat right now is doing so. That is not enough money to live on.
Right.
Um, Although I live in a place where rent is very affordable, I can't imagine living on that if I didn't have my husband's income because, as a writer, and I hate to say
Mhm.
creator, but okay, I guess that's accurate.
Yeah.
I have very much have good years and bad years, and so at least my husband's pay is pretty steady, and he's got health
Mhm.
insurance. He's not a high earner, but he does have a steady, reliable job, and
Mhm.
that's the only reason why I'm not, I don't know, working at Taco Bell or something right now
Right.
because, writing is not
Right.
for the vast majority of people, being a writer slash creator, artist, anything like that,
Mhm.
you need some kind of a day job, or you need a spouse, or you need roommates, you need something. You're not gonna be making rent.
Yeah. Or you need to have family money.
Or family money, but,
Yeah.
I
Mm.
did a really dumb thing in 1966. I
You're
chose
born
born to
born
a
to the
girl who was very young, just starting
yeah.
out, didn't have any money,
Mhm.
and, if I'd just been thinking as a pre-embryo, I would have chosen a
Yeah.
family with money, but,
Right?
I failed the plan.
Yeah. This is Arthur, everybody. Hi.
Hey,
Say
kitty
hi.
cat. We
Say
met at
hi.
Kitty last week, I believe.
That was Bertram, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's it's interesting because when you look at there's been, there's any number of articles. There's one that was, I think, in New York Magazine last year and, interviewed people who were basically, living with family money and had, subventions from their parents, and it just makes it's even if it's what people don't consider, the big, huge trust funds, it eases things, right? It takes away that friction from worrying about, like you said, the ups and downs of a creative, income and it smooths that out.
And it can play out at all different income levels, I think, because, yes, there are
Mhm.
people that, they know from a young age they're gonna inherit a big chunk of money,
Yeah.
that either they wouldn't have to work at all if they didn't want to, or that they've got, like, a baseline safety level that they know is there, that's gonna
Yeah.
catch if they fall. But, and, that's not me, but, like, when my son was young, my kids are in their 30s, but when my son was young, he went through a point where he was just barely had his head above water. He had student loans, and he had a crappy car that needed to be replaced, and he just wasn't making any money, he couldn't get ahead, and, something happened to kind of, like, cause the dominoes to begin to fall. I said, "Zach, just move back home for a couple
Mhm.
years and pay off your student loan, get a decent car, pay it off,
Yeah.
build up an emergency fund," and, I don't remember exactly what I said at the beginning, but he very reluctantly did so, and I treated him like an adult. I didn't treat him like a little boy. It wouldn't have worked otherwise. And, he paid for his cell phone, he paid for his personal expenses and things like that. He paid for his car insurance, but he didn't have to pay rent or utilities. He had use of the laundry facilities. He bought us snacks, but I served food.
Mhm.
So he was able to take almost everything he earned, and he was making, like, quadruple payments on everything, which
Mhm.
you gotta pay things off a lot faster than if you're paying the minimum for years. So in fairly short order, he was in much, much, much better shape, but if I had been dead, and if his father, I'm sure his dad would have helped him if he needed to, but if he'd been on his own without a family, even a family without a lot of money,
Mhm.
I don't know what would have happened to him because that was a really tough time, and a lot of people go
Mhm.
a time like that, and if your family can catch you in any way, either to give you money or a place to live or
Mhm.
pay for your schooling or whatever it is, it makes a huge difference where you start out in life
Mhm.
and if your
Yeah,
family can give you a lift or not. Little
and
lift,
this
lift either one.
yeah, absolutely, and this makes a big difference in the all the stages of aging, right? Money and aging and what you can do at every age, but certainly makes a big difference when you get to the retirement age and what you have and what you can do and, who you can what you've been, able to accumulate, right? And what you've been able to, can you bring to the table for a retirement fund.
And it's very weird that we have the system we have because you're being asked to save up, but you don't know you may die before retirement age,
Right.
or you may live to be, my dad's wife, her mother is still living and is she 98? I think she turned 98 or 99 on Christmas. And, you know, uh she could, my sister was only 52.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to save up money with such a large window, not knowing if you're going to die young or live at
Mhm.
an exceptionally long old age? And also, are you going to stay healthy until quite near the end? Or
Mhm.
are you going to have very expensive health care?
Yeah.
Why do we have this system? Because you think about your house. My house is probably not going to catch on fire,
I
knock
was
on
gonna
wood,
say.
but it could. I mean, my sister had a house fire when she was young. You can't predict if you're going to have a house fire or other things like that. So that's
Mhm.
why we have house insurance and we all pay in. And I've been paying in to one house insurance cost or another since I was 24, and I've never made a single claim. So I don't
Mhm.
even know how much money I spent on insurance without ever getting a single penny out of it. But if my house catches on fire tonight, I'm going to be glad I had it.
Yeah.
So that the risk is spread amongst, I don't know, thousands of people probably. It's like among these thousands of people, some of us will lose our house due to fire or something.
Right.
And we don't treat old age this way. Like we don't know. You're all being asked to be prepared to live
Right.
to 100 or more. And if you've got family money, maybe living to 100 isn't such a big problem. But if
Mhm.
you retired when you were, say, let's just say 65, and you're still alive at 100, what are the chances that you have saved enough to cover all
Mhm.
those years? And they're
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about what it means to think about living to 100 years. And I mean, thinking about that in the first place makes us think about who actually does live to 100 years, right? And we talked about aging looks different for all kinds of people, right? Aging looks very different. Aging while rich looks very different from aging while poor.
The
You
rich
know,
live
those
longer.
your outcomes are completely different. Race is a huge factor in terms of access that you have to healthcare, the healthcare quality that you get. Have drug trials and have all of the research been done. It's the same thing for women, right? Research has always been done on the male subject, and so what we know is about the male subject. So
But you know,
who gets to 100 is one question, right? Because it looks a lot different for everybody. But were everyone to get to 100, what would that mean? And what would be the things that we would want to put in place for people
oh,
to think about them being as flourishing as possible, right? Living as good a life as possible at 100 without what we've done now is basically shifted all of the responsibility to the individual and said, like, try to stay healthy and, like join a fitness program and engage in some financial literacy and cross your fingers, right? Hope it all works out.
I was in a room full of, I think I'm told there were about 800 people there, 800 people who were generally liberal and politically minded. It was a dinner honoring Senator Dick Durbin, my senator. I'm in Illinois.
Mhm.
So, he's retiring and he's been, oh Lord, I think he first got elected in, I want to say 1966 because I happen to remember that year because that's the big year of my birth, and I think that's when he first got elected. Don't quote me on that, but he served for a very, very long time. And, so in this room, there were a lot of union people and a lot of people from the left, and I kept hearing people because there are a lot of people I didn't know there, and the people at the table sitting by me, they see I'm a certain age,
Mhm.
and they ask, "Are you retired?" And I said, "Ha, ha, 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 I'll never retire." And, there were a lot of UAW members, and I'll thank the UAW. They paid for my
Mhm.
ticket. I got to go free because they had bought a few tables, and they wanted, some politically minded people to come, and so I was happy
Mhm.
to go. But, many of them were able to, retire at a really young age because they had, worked in the heyday of unions. UAW, I live in Caterpillar country,
Mhm.
Caterpillar and Peoria, which is not too far from me.
Mhm.
And so it was not too uncommon for the working class people in my neck of the woods to retire in their 50s.
Mhm.
Is incredible to me. And my dad actually retired in his 50s in a different area. And it's not too uncommon for people to do that. And yet, if you don't have a pension, you almost certainly can't do that unless you have really, really made bank in your career.
Mhm.
People who, if you're retired when you're 55, and you live to say, let's just say 95 to make the math really easy because I was a
Yeah.
journalist major. That's
Right.
40 years.
So I say no one goes to law school to do math.
So if you have to if you're gonna be non-working, not employed, let's say, for 40 years or so,
Mhm.
you can't you're not gonna save up that much money yourself in most cases. You're gonna be depending upon good Social Security and probably a pension and or family money,
Mhm.
and, if you don't have those things, you're not gonna retire in your 50s,
Right.
you're gonna hope to retire in your mid-60s
Yeah.
if your health holds out.
If that, right?
If your health yeah, and everybody plans to remain healthy. Nobody
Mhm.
says, I'm planning to have, some pretty serious health problems."
Right.
We all like to think we're gonna be healthy. And even if you are really watching your diet and really exercising and really doing all the things, people do that who die young or die or sick. None of these things are a guarantee.
Yeah, it's true, and I found another I was looking at another, statistic, and it was about the decrease in the number of private sector workers with job-based pensions, and, I mean, first of all, we've gone from defined benefit pensions, right, where people like, people got a defined amount of money every month once they retired, and those have gone by the wayside except for, sometimes government employees, sometimes but those are gone, replaced by the 401k, right, replaced by defined contribution, and everything's now marketized, and so you're hoping that your portfolio does well, right? You're hoping that things work out, but even then, this a statistic I found was that the share of private sector workers with job-based pensions since 1980 has gone from 38% to something like 11%. And a lot of this, right, is the precarious, like new forms of precarious labor, and people are driving Uber, and people are,
The gig
working part
economy.
time someplace, gig economy, right? And so people don't have those, like you were talking about, like the, things that the union used to help people get. You
Mhm.
don't have those kinds of protections anymore, and it makes people's retirement experience really precarious and really, it's dangerous to not have, healthcare, to not have the money that you need to buy groceries and heat and
Well, let's think about people who may have retired thinking, "If I'm careful, I'll be okay," right
yeah,
before COVID.
right.
Because a pre-COVID dollar and, and a dollar today are not the same dollar. We all
Mhm.
know this.
Yeah,
I am shocked every single time I buy anything at all because I'm thinking in pre-COVID dollars, like, "This item should cost about 50 bucks." I'm like,
right,
"What do you mean you want 75 bucks or 100 bucks?" Like, "It's not worth that." Well, I guess it is because that's what they're
right.
doing. And,
Worth what people pay for, right?
yeah, but and that's one thing if it's like I was thinking about buying myself a new diamond tiara, but what if you were thinking about buying yourself a new winter coat or, a car?
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
still driving a 21-year-old car, and I hope, at some point that's gonna I'm putting money back, because I'd rather make a car payment to myself and, hopefully, and then be able to buy it outright than having to make car payments. But,
yeah.
my neighbor just bought a car. She's an older lady that has been retired for some years, so she
Mhm.
decided right before all the tariffs, were gonna come on, that she would replace her car with the idea, I think, of probably it'll be the last car she ever gets. So she made that purchase, in a very thoughtful manner, and hopefully it will last her until she's no longer able to drive,
Mhm.
whatever, but,
Yeah,
uh and I'm starting to think that way too. I'm like, if I'm buying something like a big
mhm.
ticket item, I don't wanna just assume like I did when I was 20, I didn't give any thought to what car I was gonna drive later, but now I'm thinking,
Yeah,
whatever car I get next, it might well be the last car I buy because I keep my cars for a long time.
yeah,
If I buy a car in a few years and I live to be 80, that could be my last car.
right. So
So,
here's a question. So over the, time span of age, and with going through different stages in life, was there a point where you started thinking about estate planning? Did you like write a will, or like have you ever thought about estate planning?
I think about it with great guilt because, when my sister died and she died in a car accident, so it was very unexpected, and she was only 52, anybody would have thought that she wouldn't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
And we all, like, when we first got the word, one of the things we thought about is, what would she want from her final arrangements? And also,
Hmm.
her daughter was not she has one child who wasn't even 30 at the time.
Yeah.
So the question was, who what's gonna happen, because,
Hmm.
I can't say what the financial arrangements were between my
Sure.
sister and her daughter, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming she probably helped her out sometimes a little bit. That would
Yeah.
be pretty common. And then all of a sudden to be 30 and to not have your mother alive anymore. We were you're thinking about a lot of things and you're in the middle of grief. And I don't live as close to where my sister's house was as other relatives. So my dad,
Mhm.
uh, stepmother had gone to the house, for one thing, to take care of the dogs and to see did she have anything. And
Yeah.
everything was all laid out and easy to find.
Mm.
And she had planned everything. She had chosen her
Yeah.
casket. She had health
Mhm.
insurance. Um,
Mm.
Absolutely everything was planned out. She knew what she wanted on her tombstone
Mhm.
to be honored. And by the way, one of the things she wanted was the words, "She was fabulous."
Ha! That's that is fabulous. Only a fabulous person would want that on their tombstone.
She chose a red casket, very
That's great.
fancy, and she got
Yeah.
specified it was inexpensive. She said, "Don't buy
Yeah.
it from the funeral home, save money, buy it from this place, and
Mhm.
this is
Ah,
the model number, this is the one I want."
that's amazing.
She had done that all at 52, and I am 4 years
Wow.
younger than my sister, and this was several years ago, and I thought, "Boy, I need to do this so my kids don't." I haven't done it. I've got no excuse.
Yeah.
I feel very guilty about it.
I mean, you're not alone. Most people, the majority of people don't have a will or any other type of estate plan. A lot of people will have, if they have benefits through their employer, they'll have life insurance through their employer, like we've talked about a retirement plan. But people put off doing things like wills or living trusts. And obviously, the older you get, the more likely you are to have some. And like you just said, the life experience also really prompts people. So if people have had, a family member or other a loved one that died, it prompts them. Right, a big time that people make estate plans is when they get married, which we kind of talked about last week, and also when they have children because they want to name a guardian, right? And then they can fight about whose family is the better caretaker, right? If something
Well,
happens.
for one thing, I've got a little bit of a not really unique, I'm sure a lot of people deal with this, but, I my first marriage, ended after 15 years, and with him, I had 2 children. I did not have any children from my
Mhm.
second marriage, but, I'm 60 and he is 62, and, of course, we plan to live forever, but we
Right.
probably won't. So, the question is, and he had no children from he didn't have a previous marriage, and he had no children, so
Mhm.
I had to just ask him directly. I said, "I feel like my kids should inherit everything because he just hasn't had any children." And again, he's Dutch and he's been living in this country for 20 years. So I said, "Do you agree that we will just leave everything to my kids?" And he's like,
Mhm.
"Of course, I want to leave everything to kids and grandkids." He's close to
Mhm.
them. The question is, and I hate to bring this up, I said, "But I know you say you would never marry another, and I know I'm totally irreplaceable in every way.
Ah,
But
ah,
what if I drop dead tomorrow and at some point you remarry and you say that you'd never do that, but
mhm.
cannot know
Always,
you cannot know
people
that."
always do. People always remarry.
They always say they're not going to, but
They
then
always do.
because you get lonely. If
Yeah.
you have a happy marriage particularly, you're probably looking to
Right.
my dad was married to my mom for, call it I think it was 31 years, and, they had a from everything I could see, they had a really great marriage.
Mhm.
After he dated around a little he waited a while, then he dated around for a little bit, and then he
Mhm.
met this woman, was actually fixed up with her by relatives, and they've been married for longer than I have. And,
Mhm.
thank goodness because, you know, he had a happy marriage, he wanted that again,
Mhm.
and, uh, I know that, his second wife will inherit things that would otherwise have gone to me, but that's just
Mhm.
how it is. I'm not upset about that. Um But the thing is, it does make it a little bit harder to figure out what you do wanna give your kids versus
Mhm.
spouse because,
Yeah.
if he's been married to this lady for a long time, they're very happy, of course she should inherit something.
Mhm.
There's also cases where somebody gets married, um, and then passes away in short order, and the new spouse inherits and the children don't,
Mhm.
haven't written things down.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm feeling very bad about this. I need to put this stuff in writing.
Yeah.
And my husband and I need to really have a tough talk about what if you do remarry? Because you say you're
Right.
not to, but what if you do? I still want my share of things to go to my kids, of course, and
Sure.
grandkids.
And I'll
But
just say, I mean, so I teach every semester, I teach inheritance law. And the textbook is basically just full of cases of, second marriages and third marriages and conflicts between subsequent spouses and kids from previous marriages. And, there's all of these cases because, again, first of all, people get remarried, right? It's just very common. And you see all of these times when the second spouse says, "Oh, of course I'll take care of your children from the first marriage. Of course I will." And I mean, I'm sure 90% of the time they do, but the cases that show up in court are when they don't. And there's definitely a good number of those. So it's something that people think about, and it's something that people need to plan for.
Well, grief brings out the worst in people.
Yeah.
You all know cases of family members who stopped speaking to each other or had really bad conflict because they didn't think that their inheritance was fair.
Yeah.
And, a great novel, by the way, because I read a ton. I bought a book called The Dutch House just because I'm
I
married to.
just bought that.
Oh, since I'm married to a Dutch guy, it has almost nothing to do with people being Dutch, by the way.
Yeah.
But it was just the title caught my eye, and Ann
Yeah.
Patch, a well-known
Yeah. I like Ann Patchett.
but one of the things that happens, and not to give any spoilers, but it is a case where the second wife
Mhm.
ends up inheriting everything and not being an ideal stepmother, let's just say.
I can't wait to read it. I'm excited. Yeah, it's very common, right? It's another common thing. So, another thing I was thinking about, we talked about last time, the marriage and money we talked about last time, and we talking about marriage and money and aging, and that's also one of the things that I was looking at, and it makes sense based on all the things we talked about last week. But the big discrepancy between what women have in retirement savings and what men have in retirement savings. So, I looked up some statistics and it said women, for instance, have 40% of retired women have $100,000 or less than savings, compared with 33% of retired men. It says median 401k balances for women can be up to 65% lower than those of men. And of course, based on all the things that we talked about, right? Like lost opportunities, labor market discrimination, caretaking responsibilities. But that's a pretty significant difference. And so that also makes a difference when we think about money and aging, right? It's
Yeah,
money and gender and aging. And I also looked up some statistics based on race, and they don't look at these things intersectionally, so it's hard to do that. Um, but it said roughly 62% of Black working age households own no assets in a retirement account, compared with 37% of white households.
mm,
So there's both gender and race gaps in retirement savings, and they're pretty big. They're pretty substantial.
yeah, and that you've got the popular if you start just looking at, what's being put out there, you are being told that $1,000,000 might not be enough, and, like,
Right.
plenty of people do it with nothing or with very, very small amounts, maybe
Hmm.
maybe they manage to save up 100,000, which isn't gonna take you far because the there's also the idea that you should just live off just the interest,
Right.
but you probably can't do that. What's maybe you can tell me off the top of your head, if you let's just say 100,000 since that was a number I think you just mentioned a minute ago.
Right.
If you only have 100,000 and you need to retire and you could say, "Well, you should keep working," but maybe you can't keep
Right.
working. If that's what you face, $100,000. How much can you really get from that if you were
I
to
mean, people tell you should take like 4%, right? 4% is what you should be taking a year of whatever like the fair market value of your assets are. So if you're taking 4%, it's not giving you a lot, right?
it's almost nothing. Um,
Yeah. Somebody mentioned the
Hearing
power.
4% of 100,000.
Yeah, it's not fair. I was going to say somebody mentioned the power of the unions. Thousand is 4,000.
Yes, I
Yeah,
need Siri to do even simple math. I apologize. I am not good at math.
that's
Yeah,
funny.
so $4,000, that's not gonna do you a whole lot of good, honestly.
Not going to get you too far, right? So if you have that, and
It's better than nothing. It is
better
better,
than nothing.
but, one hospitalization is gonna wipe that out.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think all of these gaps, these like the gender gap, the race gap in retirement, even what we talked about with just, people working in jobs that don't have, which jobs have pensions and which jobs don't, which ones have defined benefit, which ones don't. There's just a lot of people who are sort of, not where they think they should be and not in a place where they're going to be able to afford things like, a major medical emergency.
Yeah,
And so thinking about like what we can be doing for people to help them again smooth out all of these friction points and rough spots and economic, uh, points of economic precarity because, it's just it's a, yeah, I don't think it's the political system or the economic system that you and I would like to live in when we can't take care of people like that.
Yeah. A comment from Robert, is it Sowers? I don't know.
Yeah, so the unions.
Uh, yeah, he's the power of unions is
Mhm.
so underestimated in living standards today. Retiring in your 50s in the recent past compared to today seems so far-fetched and shouldn't be. It just shows how much we have devolved in society, involving the value of labor and our ability to live within certain parameters. And yeah, I don't have these numbers in front of me, but if you Google it, you'll see if you look at the line of like worker productivity is going up, it's
Mhm.
not dramatically in recent decades, but worker pay has not gone up dramatically. It is
Yeah.
about it's we're not getting paid for what we are producing like we used to.
Mm.
A lot of it is getting creamed off the top and going to other things.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're paying things that we didn't used to pay for. We have when I think about the expenses that my parents had back in the day, say in the like early 70s, they didn't pay for cable. They had one telephone. They did not pay a water bill because we lived in a small town. They had a well. They didn't pay for sewer because we had a septic tank, which was pretty common in a rural area, especially a few decades ago. I think they paid for garbage pickup. They would have paid for, groceries and, things like that. But there's a lot of payments now that people feel like they have to have. And sure, you can live without cable TV. I only had cable TV real briefly once in my life a long time ago, and you can live without Netflix and so forth. But at some point, you do have to spend some money on some things. You can't really go through life paying nothing but rent, utilities, beans, and rice. You have to live. You have to buy clothes. You deserve a few pleasures. Netflix or something like it, when for as much, entertainment as you can get for that, it's probably the cheapest entertainment you can get.
Right.
It's crazy for a person who's struggling to decide that they're gonna have things like Netflix. So how do we expect people to live if our Social Security is insufficient?
Mhm.
For most people it is. If pensions have disappeared, and for the most part they have, and if
Mhm.
paying jobs are more rare than they used to be because partly because unions have gone away,
Mhm.
what do we think is gonna happen to
And
we
also we think, well, people have Medicare when they get older, but it doesn't cover everything, and you still have to pay, for healthcare, and if you have major medical emergencies, it's not gonna cover everything. So even if you do have Medicare, you're still gonna be paying money for health services, and I
well,
think that was the one thing that or one of the many things that Elizabeth Warren taught us, right? We're all one medical emergency away from bankruptcy.
I like Elizabeth Warren. I hope she gets a larger voice than she's had. I have, opinions about why she maybe isn't listened to as much as I think she should be, and they certainly don't have anything to do with sexism.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
The other thing to think about is the number of young people versus the number of older people in society, and
Mhm.
how much more in Social Security how many more workers we had supporting each retired person in the past
Yeah.
versus now. Those numbers, I think we all know, and some people say, "Well, young women need to have more babies." Well, I'm sorry, but not all young women wanna sacrifice many, many years that
Right.
they need for their own old age. They're
Yeah.
thinking ahead, "If I stay home with a lot of babies, uh, and even if you decide not to stay home, you can't afford to pay daycare for all these babies." So we keep I'm tired of us thinking we're gonna solve every society's problem by women coming through and providing what amounts to free reproductive labor to
Right.
support all the people my age. I'm sorry, but I don't think they should have to do it. I think that
Yeah.
if I have to think on who am I gonna lean on to make sure I don't starve to death as a really elderly person, I'm gonna think about the class of people who are really doing well from our society. I'm thinking about the ultra rich.
Right.
Oligarchy or the 1% or the 5%, wherever you wanna draw the line, some people are doing really, really well, and they aren't working 100 times harder than the rest of us. They're
No.
just not.
No,
And
it's true. It's absolutely true. And I mean, the it's the care. It's care. It's still a care problem, right? It's a care
Mhm.
problem on the end you're young, when you have children. Like there's a care problem, a child care problem. There's also a care for elder care problem, right? So it's like we're not good at taking we don't not we're not good at it because we don't try hard enough, right, to figure out ways we don't care to. We don't find ways to basically make care possible for children and for people who are older, right? We expect people to be in the labor market, and if they can't be, like a child or an older person who doesn't, who's retired, we're not sure what to do with them, and it puts them in the situation of being obviously children are dependent, but it's putting older people also in dependency situations. And if you don't have that, it's really hard.
Well,
So
think about caregiving. Um, of course, I raised 2 kids. I haven't done a lot of elder caregiving, but there's a lot of similarities there.
yeah,
And if somebody that's not something that scales. If you come up with an app, that's why the people who have the most money, they're all in something tech related because tech scales. Once you have invented an app, whether
right.
one person uses it or a million or a billion people use it, the expenses really they scale up and it's about the same. So if you have once you've invented some sort of tech, you don't have to like hire a million people to like make the gizmos or something. But caregiving, you can only take care of so many small children. One
Right.
person cannot magically take care of a million people. You can only take care of probably what 3 babies. You could take care of these numbers are off my head. If you're in daycare, you'll know I'm wrong, but maybe you can take care
Right.
of 7 toddlers and maybe you can take care of 20 kindergartners. I don't know. But
Yeah.
but then how many elderly people? If you're working in a nursing home, how many elderly people can you take care of? What's going to depend upon how much care they need. But if you're changing diapers and spoon feeding and bathing and helping, with every little thing, you can only take care of a small number of elderly people. And, none of us knows. We might be in that
Mhm.
position someday. Do you want the person who's being run ragged trying to take care of 10 people? Or would you like to have enough care that someone can take care of you and treat you with some dignity?
Mhm. I mean,
And
there's a whole problem too, right? That there's been a lot written about, like about assisted, about care facilities and assisted living care, all of the nursing homes, whatever facility we're looking at, and the number of people in them decreasing, and the care decreasing because so many of them have been bought by private equity.
oh
And
god,
there's like right an incursion of private equity into care facilities that's really decreased the quality of the care. And I think, there have been studies about the outcomes of people living in care facilities after the quality of care and also just the longevity of people once private equity buys the facility, and it just goes down like in quite significant ways.
I have known of several cases in my own inner circle recently in which a person who was living independently has had to go into a nursing home.
Yeah.
In one case, his wife, who was, of course, also an older person, was losing weight and running herself ragged. It was gonna kill her. She had to put her husband into a care home. He had Alzheimer's. He had to be watched every second. He needed a lot of hands-on physical care, and it was gonna kill her. She had to put him in her home, and, it was an expensive place. They had means to pick a what should have been a good place. It was upper level, but still, my family member that would care for him said they discovered that they would just say, "Oh, he wasn't hungry," but he needed to be fed, and they weren't
Mm.
feeding him. He was hungry. That's unconscionable. How can you let an old person go hungry? That's what was being done, and they
Mhm.
weren't changing his diapers. It was leaking, and this was in a nice place that cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I
And
think the average cost, I
you
was looking the other day because I talk about in class the average cost in Virginia of just care, not in the assisted living portion or not in memory care, which is obviously a lot more, just to be in a care, sort of a senior living care facility. I think it was about 15,000 a month.
It isn't that how many of us I don't know about the rest of
Uh,
you, but I don't have an extra $15,000 a month in my, budget.
Yeah, I mean it's really right, and it's something that's not covered right by Medicare,
No,
so it's
no,
not
I mean,
something that you'll be covered.
I'm not ashamed of saying that, like, my monthly income is not even a third of that, okay? It's more like a fourth of that. There isn't any amount of saving I can do that's gonna allow me to spend $15,000 a month on anything. If
And then
something
you're telling us that you spend $15,000 a month and the care's not even good, so,
the care's not
that's a
even
whole
good,
other problem.
and then what are you gonna spend for the rest of the time? Like, you have other costs besides your loved one in a nursing home too, so
Yeah.
even if you had quite a bit of money do you have enough to spend 15,000 plus
Right.
all your living expenses? And, who can pay for these things? A very small number of people can. What happens is you spend down your house and then you have to go on Medicaid. A lot of people probably don't realize it seems that Medicare doesn't cover a nursing home,
Right.
except in the short term. If you're having rehab, like after surgery, they might
Yeah.
pay for that. But um,
Right. They're not
we
going to
use
cover care in a care facility like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay for this yourself, and you're probably not gonna have it, so the money that you thought you were gonna live on because you had a house that was worth something or whatever, that's gonna get all eaten up, and you're not gonna be able they talk about the money that's gonna supposedly be passed down from boomers to millennials. Not if that boomer spends even a short period of time in a nursing home, they're not sending down anything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you
I
just
mean, you see lots of cases where, and we think about this just with drafting estate plans. You tell people don't put in numbers because you never know how much you're actually going to have when you die, given you might have extraordinary care costs. And so, like, you don't do your estate plan in numbers, do it in percentages, right? And so you don't want to like commit yourself to something that you will definitely not have in your estate when you die if you've gone through. Uh, Again, experiences where you have to spend a lot of money because you're in care or because you had medical needs or things like that. So,
it's something that worries me a great deal. My father is 80 years old, he's still in pretty decent health, but you know, 80-year-olds, you know what their main pastime is? Going to the doctor. He just saw the dermatologist, he's gotta see a cardiologist, he needs to see his regular doctor to check up a
right.
couple things, and, he's still, able to live independently. He's married, but ironic, as I mentioned, his wife spends literally half of her time because she and her sister, her one sibling, take turns, staying with their mother, who is, I can't remember, 98 or 99 and
Mhm.
still living in her home.
Yeah.
So that means she obviously can't be left alone.
Right.
Not obviously, but she can't be left alone for any period of time at all. So
Yeah.
either my dad's wife or the sister has to be with her at all times. That means half the time my dad is all completely on his own,
Yeah.
and he can do that, but you have to realistically wonder about what's gonna happen in situations like this, and there's millions of people
Yeah.
facing similar situations.
Yeah. That's true.
We leave it up to the individual to solve this problem.
Right. We've shifted the responsibility, right, from a systemic one, from a system problem to an individual problem. And again, shifted the burden for people to, do better and invest more in your 401k and, do better, stay healthy, like get out
Yeah,
there and walk. And, yeah. So we just
not
have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask you one question before we wrap up. Because you mentioned it earlier, and I had said this to you also. There's so much retirement planning and wealth planning information available, but also like so much on social media now. Tons of people are worried that Gen Z is getting like all of their basic like financial literacy and retirement planning and investment and advice from like TikTok, right?
yeah.
Like there's so much out there, and I mean, I as I said, I've created my own problem because I've tempted the algorithm by like googling any number of things. But do you have any thoughts on social media and the retirement and wealth industry?
I Again, I just turned 60 and I get all kinds of mailings from companies wanting to give me a free steak dinner in return for listening to their spiel about whatever services they offer. And I don't, those just go right in this recycling bin because
Yeah,
truth is I don't have a great deal of money and I'm not saving anything near like what they say I should be. And there isn't a way that I can do it. It's not a matter of giving up a latte. I make my coffee at home.
right.
It's not a matter of giving up, I don't have a great number of I live a pretty simple life,
Yeah.
and I always have. So it's not that I really should be saving more. It's that I'm saving about as much as it's possible for me to save
Hmm.
without, going full on living under the bridge or something. And I'm not an unusual. I'm not an exception. There's a lot of people. So if you're not expecting a lot of Social Security and you don't have a pension because you didn't work for government, which is just about the only people that have a pension now,
Right.
and if you weren't a higher earner that was able to save a lot of money, etcetera, if there this is not a rare instance, this is common.
Right.
I'm in very good company, and to me, the only answer is that, we do things like lift the cap on Social Security.
Hmm.
Right now, somebody who, somebody who has a pretty decent job, say as an engineer, pays the same amount as Elon Musk.
Yeah, I'm
And
all for that.
so we need to fund this, and
Yeah.
also need people need to be paid better for their work.
Mhm.
People who are working deserve to be paid fairly, and I
Mhm.
know that many workers are. You know, we we're all paying more also, like you mentioned, private equity, we're all paying more for things like seeing the doctor, seeing the dentist. We're all paying far more for that than we used to, and it's because private equity is taking a big cut of it.
Mhm.
So, I feel like the general population is being kind of milked,
Yeah,
and a lot of the money doesn't trickle down, the money is suctioned upward,
right.
and until we realize that, we can blame immigrants all we want. That is not the problem. The problem is that not the immigrants, that they're not getting benefits. Um,
Well, it
people who
depends which immigrant you're looking at. The problem is maybe the immigrant who's Elon Musk, right?
Yes, yeah, that's the main immigrant problem we have in this
Yeah.
country.
He's the biggest immigrant problem we have.
And Peter Thiel, yeah, and I'm sure there's others, but this is not a problem that the little guy that's working at his regular job
Yeah.
can solve. This is a systemic problem that's got to be solved by everybody looking at this honestly and saying, I don't think that deporting people who came here and were working their tail off, and if they were not legal citizens, they're not getting anything. They're not going to get. They're paying into Social Security and they're not going to be able to draw it. They're like the opposite of hurting us. They're actually benefiting others, not themselves. So
Mhm.
until we stop blaming the poor and blaming the immigrants and blaming whatever, we need to fix our system, or else there's really no hope for at least half of Americans of having a decent retirement
Yeah.
if we don't
Um,
fix.
I think that is true. I was gonna say it's a great place to end. It's not really. It's a terrible place to end. Um, it's kind of a mic drop place to end. It is true. We need to do things that help people, right? That help people make more money so they have more money in retirement. We need to think about things like social security caps and think about those types of solutions. And those are the things that will help close the gaps, right? We have so many different gaps. Those will help make sure that people get care, and those will help make sure that we don't have, seniors living in poverty. And especially, again, you're going to be more likely to be in poverty if you are not white, if you are a woman. So just making sure that people are able to live in comfort in their old age, because the last thing we should be asking people to do is like forego, like you said, forego a latte or not have Netflix because they're worried that they're not going to have any money, right? I mean, that's just a sad situation.
It really is, and it's not like I said. If I could ask people to remember one thing, it's that this is not a problem that individuals can solve. Some people can. Yeah, I mean, some people are fortunate and they have better situations than other, and that's great for them. But for the average person, it's not a problem that you can solve by
Yeah.
yourself.
It's a system problem, not an individual problem. So that's how
Yes.
we got to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
All right.
Allison.
Yeah. Thank you. Great
Everybody
afternoon.
showed up, and
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. I'll go. I hope you have some like birthday cake or something left over. Go have a piece of like leftover birthday cake and enjoy.
thank you. Everybody have a great week. We'll be back next Thursday. Bye bye.
Bye.